All right, in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about taxonomy. We're going to split up classification into a couple different videos. This first one is on taxonomy. All right, so on Earth, we've identified nearly 2 million different living organisms so far. Because that number is so huge, we have to have a way to group or classify everything. We can't just have individual organisms. We'd have nearly 2 million different groups. It's incredible. It's ridiculous. So we have to have a way to group things up. All right. When we create a classification system, there needs to be a consistent way of organizing the information so that it can be useful to everybody. All right. It wouldn't do us any good if, our school did it one way and a different school did it a different way and a different country did it a different way. So we want things to be consistent, and that makes it easier for everybody to utilize it. The system that we use follows an accepted international system based on Latin names. All right, we want everything to be consistent again, and so we all use the same method of naming things. When we first started trying to figure out how to classify different organisms, one of the earliest ones we used was simply plants and animals. We didn't realize the vast number of different organisms that were out there. The plant category was then subdivided into some smaller categories. They said plants were basically grasses, herbs, or trees, and animals were divided into 4 basic categories: fish, insects, fowl means birds, chickens, turkeys, that kind of thing, and then beasts like cows and buffalo and things like that. Okay? We know now that that's not good enough. All right? Our current system is based on the work of Carl Linnaeus. He's kind of known as the father of classification. He grouped organisms based on similar characteristics and similar lines of evolution. The evidence that we use when we classify organisms falls into several different groups. Right, the first group we use is what's called genetic classification, genetic evidence. We look at the chemical makeup of the organisms. Chemically, are they similar? Chemically, are they different? And that's one piece of evidence we use. We also look at the cells themselves. We compare and contrast the different organelles that are inside the cells. Does it have a cell wall? Does it have a cell membrane? Does it have a nucleus? Does it have this? Does it have that? And we can kind of group things based on similar characteristics. For example, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Those are 2 ways to group things. Prokaryotic would be your bacteria, the Monera, and then the other groups, animal, plant, fungi, protists, those are your eukaryotic organisms. We also look at embryos. We compare and contrast the stages and structures during development. So I'll give you an example here. Look at this picture here. If you look at these organisms right here, from here, these are all 8 different organisms. But in this early stage of development, look how similar they all look. You can't distinguish one from the other at this stage. As they start to develop and get on later on in their developmental stages, they start to differentiate. Very similar here, but look at the stage. Now you're starting to see some differences. And then just before birth, now you can really see the difference. All right? You can see we've got a fish here. We've got an amphibian, salamander, tortoise, chicken, pig, cat, rabbit, and human. I mean, even at this stage, look how similar the pig, the cat, the rabbit, and the human are. Look at structural evidence. Body parts of organisms. How are some body parts similar in design and origin? For example, if you look at the arm bone of a human, we can see in other organisms, I have a whale here and a bat, we can see very distinct similarities between the bones in these three organisms. They're designed very similarly. Okay? If you look, you got the long bone here, there, and there, quite similar. You got two up here, you got two here, one here. Okay? Fingers, there. I mean, there's a lot of similarities here. Those are called homologous structures. They're body parts that are similar in design and where they came from in different organisms. All right, fossil evidence. We look at the remains of past organisms and compare them to modern organisms. So the modern horse, we can look back through time and look at fossils of early organisms, and we can see similarities and differences and how we can use those similarities and differences to group things. And the last thing we're going to talk about in this particular video is how we classify things in here. We use what's called a dichotomous key. And once again, there's our blue word. So there is a video that goes with studying about dichotomous keys. We're going to do some labs and things on dichotomous keys in here. Very important to understand how to use it. So I recommend watching this video. All right, so a dichotomous key is used to identify an unknown organism using a structured set of processes. Okay? It's a series of yes or no or either or questions based on a certain property that we study in order to determine something's identity. So notice yes or no, there's two choices. Either or, there's two choices. The prefix di in dichotomous means two. So we're making a key based on a series of two choices. So you have one of two choices, then underneath those you have one of two choices, then one of two choices, and you continue following a path until it leads you to the identity of whatever organism that you're looking for. Here's a very simple example. Okay, I have some little buggies here. All right. Got 6 examples at the top of some organisms that are very similar, but they do have some differences. All right. This is what a dichotomous key looks like. All right. It starts with one characteristic and it gives you two choices. So in the first process, we're looking at wings. And they said, do we have small wings or do we have large wings? Those are our two choices. So if we look at the first choice, if the answer has small wings, we go to number 2. Down here, under number 2, now we create another characteristic to separate them out. So there's only 2 possibilities that have small wings. This guy and this guy right here. So if they have small wings, we go to 2. Has a single pair of wings or a double pair of wings? Well, look at these 2 guys. This guy has a single pair. So if it has a single pair, that must be species A. If it has a double pair, that must be species B. So those guys are done. The small wing guys are done. Now we got to do these guys right here. And if you look, if they have the large wings, that's where you skip over 2 because we've already done 2 and we go to 3. 3, does it have a double pair or does it have a single pair? If it has a double pair, notice we've got 3 of them, so that doesn't really give us an answer yet. So we have to create another characteristic if they have a double pair of wings. If they have a single pair, guess what? There's only one choice for a single pair, and that's species C. That's why we got C right here. The last, we have to separate this guy from this guy and this guy. And one of the characteristics that they chose for this one, there are different ways to do it, but they chose spots. So these 2 have spots. So if it has spots, we got to create another characteristic. If it doesn't, which is this one right here, it must be D. All right. So now the only thing left, if it has spots, are these two right here, E and F. Okay. And now what it's telling you is it wants us to fill in what could be the characteristic to separate E from F. And looks like the only thing that separates these two guys would be E has light colored wings and F has dark colored wings. That's a dichotomous key. So now if I hand you a picture of a bug, you can follow this flow chart and figure out what species it would be. All right. So if I handed you this guy, if I didn't give you the name here and I handed you this guy right here, you would say it has large wings. Okay. So remember, we're looking at this one right here. So let's say I handed you a picture of that guy. Has large wings, we go to 3. All right. Here's 3. Does it have double wings or single wings? Has double wings. So we want 3A. Now it tells me I got to go to 4. So I go to 4. Does it have spots or no spots? It has spots. If it has spots, I go to 5. And then 5 says light colored wings or dark colored wings. It has dark color. That tells me that it's species F. It's simply a way to work through a set of steps to be able to figure out what that species is that you're looking at. That is a dichotomous key.